Yo, 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 this is Ezekiel Khalil back again in another show of It Matters because everything we talk about here matters to every single one on this planet, whether you're in an environment, whether you're helping the underprivileged communities, whether you're helping the refugees, or whether you're on a science research that will bring tremendous abundance to all the real world problems on this planet. But today we have someone who I feel no needs any introduction simply because he's with an organization that I have been not just impressed but heavily looking into their updates for a very long time, helping a lot of the educational stream in Malaysia in general. And this man has made time for to joining us today. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Seng, the CEO of Teach from Malaysia. Welcome to the show, Seng. How are you?
Good. Thanks so much, Zikri. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Oh, likewise, likewise, likewise. Yeah, it's great to finally converse and have you on the
Yeah.
show.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it's an honor to be honest because TFM is one of the biggest names in Malaysia, and we thank the service and the valor that you have done, and I believe this is a new role for you in the organization. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right. I've been in this role since April last year. So I was appointed CEO of Teach from Malaysia 2 weeks into the MCO. And so it's been an
Oh,
interesting ride so far, but
oh boy.
grateful to be here.
Man, I mean, could you tell us a bit more that after being appointed as the new leadership of the organization and then going into MCO, what were the tides like for you? I mean, like I think the usual modus operandi. I'm sure it has changed. I mean, you cover a huge range of Malaysia in the education system. Maybe perhaps you could just share a bit of the what you guys really do as TFM and how did that transition sort of got you to adapt, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, Teach for Malaysia has existed. Well, our first cohort of fellows, which I was a part of, was in 2012, right? So we've existed for all of these years, and our mission is to ensure that every child in Malaysia, no matter where they're born into, right, no matter which community, whether it's urban or rural, no matter what kind of family income level they're born into, that they're going to have the opportunity to attain an excellent education. So, in Malaysia, we have a public school system that has done well in ensuring access for students. So, Malaysia has almost universal enrollment rates into primary and secondary school rates are really high as well. But the challenge is whether all of the kids in the system are having access to a quality education, the kind of education that's going to be able to set them up to fulfill their potential in life. And so what we've wanted to do, or what we've been doing all of these years at Teach from Malaysia, is to bring in who we hope to be some of the most passionate, talented young people, and for them to go and serve in some of the most high need schools in the country. And so typically what we see in the Malaysian education system is that often the schools that perform the best, and the students, that perform the best often get access to better resources. So, just as any kid that's going through the Malaysian public education system knows that there is a first class and a last class, and that you get ranked according to your academic results, which is something that we don't believe in, but that what that results in is that kids who score the best often get the most attention. And so we wanted to flip that, right? We want to say, actually, it's the kids who are struggling the most that need the most resources. So how do we put in some people, some of the most passionate leaders into the system to serve the kids who need them the most, right? And so across these years, we've gone to 10 states across the country, and worked in some of the most challenging high need schools in the country. And I was privileged to complete the program into and back in 2013. That was 2 years, 2012, 2013. And we've had to tackle so many challenges already in schools when kids could come to school. And I'll give you an example of when what I say by challenges, right? So when I was a teacher, I taught English. And I taught Form 4 English to students in Selang, or in Klang, actually. And I had kids in one of my classes who had been in school obviously their whole lives. So for some of them that's 10, for some of them that's 11 years of school by the time they reach Form 4, and they could not read and write. And that just blew my mind. How could you be in school for 10 or 11 years and not learn how to read and write? And I thought that was just crazy, right? And so prior to the pandemic, we had so many challenges already in the system. But when the pandemic hit, that not only that disrupted education in Malaysia and education all over the world, but the biggest issue with that was that kids who at least in the past could access school by going to a physical school no longer could access school. And the preliminary findings from the Ministry of Education show that almost 37% of kids, that's more than 1.5 million children in the country, did not have access to a device of their own or the connectivity that enabled them to access online learning. So that's a huge amount of kids whose education was totally disrupted. So from being in school but maybe not receiving the level of support that they needed to now being totally out of school, we then had to figure, how do we respond to that, right? And how do we close the gaps, help kids to access education, but also address this issue of learning loss as a result of them being out of school?
I mean, I that's the first time I'm hearing of such stories. I've heard many, but I'm a bit puzzled and also a bit concerned. The fact that you, during your time as a teacher, you've experienced a student, maybe a few of them, who are struggling to read and write even after being there in school for 11 years. That's yo, man. I mean, to be honest, I don't know what to think about it, and I'm glad someone from an organization like you are sort of unearthing these things. But do you think this is wellly covered amongst parents that our students are struggling? And would you also sort of look at any reformations needed with the way how the education system has been run in public schools? Because the fact that you've been around to sort of learn a bit and observe how it functions, and I'm sure there's been a lot of memos that you've written to give vast improvements of the education system. Do you have anything you want to share on that particularly, or could you share it actually?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that number one, the improving education is a massive undertaking. So there's no sort of like silver bullet solution that if you just do this one thing, it's going to solve all the problems, right? There's so many factors that affect
Absolutely.
the quality of a student's education, right? And I think that that a challenge with the system is that oftentimes for a lot of kids who struggle the most, they come from backgrounds that don't have the resources and opportunities to allow them to thrive in the system. So
Right.
oftentimes you may have kids who struggle the most would have kids that typically may not be would have parents, sorry, not kids, would have parents who may not be educated themselves and may not know how to support them in the classroom, right? And when tested or when ranked globally, it's about 46% of 15-year-old Malaysians who they're not illiterate, but they do not meet international reading proficiency levels. So when you
Oh
think about
boy.
how we compete at the global level, there's a huge amount. So we think about reading levels, it's the thinking skills, it's being able to
Yeah.
understand complex texts and stuff like that, right? And so we're very behind globally. But I think the challenge is that students who do well, they're either now being transitioned out of the public system and being sent to private or international schools.
Mm.
And kids at the quote unquote top get the support that they need. And so often some of the most influential voices in education are obviously parents, but the noisiest parents often have access to the resources that they need. Obviously, everyone wants to see a change in education, typically in Malaysia, but parents at the quote unquote top don't see sort of like the needs that the many other students are facing. So I think that ultimately, when we think about what needs to happen to change education in Malaysia, it really is about how do we empower people in education. And that's all the way from how do we empower students, how do we empower teachers, how do we empower school principals, how do we empower people all across the system. So the challenge in Malaysia is we have a very centralized system, which means
Mm.
that one person makes a decision at the top and then everyone has to follow suit, right? So follow suit. So, for example, now the challenge is with reopening schools. How do we reopen schools? And there's a blanket statement that no schools can reopen in Malaysia until a certain date. But we do know that there are schools in certain communities where it may actually be safe for them to open, and these would be very rural or remote communities, and they may have very or no COVID cases. It would be safe for them to reopen, and those are actually the schools where kids have no access to internet and they need to reopen, right? But because everything is centralized, um, people who are closest to the issue or closest to the problem can't make leadership decisions that will meet the needs of kids. So we need teachers to be empowered to
Mm.
change their teaching style to meet the needs of their students. We need students to be empowered to tell their teachers when the teaching and learning isn't working for them. Another example that I'll give is, for example, school principals in Malaysia. They cannot choose their team. So school principals
Oh,
cannot hire and fire their own teachers. So
I
that's
did not know that.
all centrally determined. So if
Whoa.
you imagine if you're the leader of an organization, right? So me as the
Yeah.
CEO of Teach Malaysia, I want to ensure that everyone on my team is performing and really making the impact that we want to make, right? And imagine if I could not choose who I wanted to hire on my team, if I couldn't performance manage them, and if someone was underperforming over an extended period of time, if we couldn't exit them, um, it's so disempowering for the leader of a school, right? And so there's
Absolutely.
so many areas of empowerment that just don't exist across the system that we need
That's
to invest in.
Yeah, that's nuts, man. I mean, I did not know that, yo. I mean, I feel the principles now. I mean, I just want to focus more, actually, more on you mentioned that everything is centralized, and one day we're looking at some form of decentralization of liberating and empowering deeply on the education system. But at this point, when and you quoted 1.5 million children don't have access to devices to teach to learn online. Could you share with the audience how deep of an impact is that? Literally, even though it's 1.5 million, it's not 3 million, it's not 5 million, but even for 1.5 million, the fact that we still have kids in school who don't have access to devices for them to go to school. How impact What kind of impact is that, and for us to grasp as the public?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think the initial indicators are that the more that students are out of school, the larger the gap is going to be in their learning. And so there was a study done on students who experienced the earthquake in Pakistan a number of years ago, and they were out of school. There was a number of students who were out of school for up to 14 weeks. And that resulted in approximately a 1.5 to 2 year learning gap compared to the kids that weren't out of school who were further away from the earthquake. And so we can see that the time being, and kids in Malaysia, that was 14 weeks. Kids in Malaysia have been out of school for more than 50 weeks at this point in time. And so the learning gap is going to then have huge knockoff effects. The World Bank expects something to the tune of $10 trillion, a loss of $10 trillion globally, for this cohort of, in terms of lifetime income that this cohort of students is going to be able to earn. In Malaysia, the estimates are something to the tune of 80 billion ringgit a year, in losses as a result of students being set back in their learning. Because obviously education has huge effects on the economy, right? Because it enables us to participate effectively in society and in the economy. So these will then have knock-off effects, not just on the individual, but then on society as a whole as well.
I don't want to be depressed about it. I've never been to, I'm one of those kids. My parents are diplomats, so we were sent to international school, and there's a difference of the type of people, the results you get from those who are in public school sometimes, and then those who are in private school. Let's put it that way. Do you think it's healthy though, the fact that more and more parents are looking at putting their kids into private school? Because let's be frank here, there's not much of great publicity that we see from the public school mainstream system for a very long time. The only good things I would see, oh, budak Cemerlang debating in USA gets #1 prize or something like that. But then when you go a bit more micro, these are one of the many stories that's not being reported. We hear all these kind of like you just mentioned, like there are still kids who are studying, who are still not performing, where they can be more literate, where they can read better, understand better. And how alarming is this, coming from an independent organization as you, looking at this, and what else can the other societies do? And it's not just always thinking private school is the answer. They're not cheap, they're expensive, not everyone can afford. So
yeah,
a lot of thoughts here.
Yeah.
What would it be for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we believe that it is a strong public education system that will enable us to achieve an equitable education system, right? And so we need to build trust in the system, and we need to improve the quality of the system overall, right? And so that's why Teach for Malaysia works to ensure that we're bringing who we hope to be some of the most passionate, dedicated people to work alongside those who are in the system. And we know that in the Malaysian education system, there are many, many, many passionate, dedicated teachers. I don't know if you've heard of Samuel Isaiah, who represented Malaysia in the Global Teacher Prize. He was in the top 10. Such an amazing, dedicated, passionate teacher. So we know that these teachers are there in the system. So how do we all work together as a society to then improve our public education system, right? And so that's what we really want to invest all of our time and effort and energy on, right? And so that's why we send our fellows, we call our teachers our fellows, into these classrooms, and we want them to then make an impact with their students immediately, right? Like making an impact with their students in the classroom, but also working with their communities to work towards change for their students. But beyond the 2 years that our fellows serve in the classroom, so they're there as full-time teachers under the Ministry of Education. They serve for 2 years, and after that, they have the option to either continue on in school, or to go off and do other things to transform education. And so, we have alumni that work at UNICEF, we have alumni that work at the World Bank, we have alumni that have started their own social enterprises to transform education. So we believe that there is a way that everyone can contribute towards improving public education in Malaysia, and that's what we want to encourage everyone to do, right? To contribute in some way or form.
No, I would love to, incite the public, in a positive way, to go on and make our public school the best again. I didn't say great this time. Two been overly used. So yeah, that's the way to move forward, right? Like I could hardly see There's a lot of great public school system outside of Malaysia for sure. I would, Singapore is one of them. The guys in Europe, the UK public school, depending where you are, in a nutshell, in generally, they are great in that sense, And I will, and I think it's also like you mentioned, like it's the trust that the public has on the public school system. It's also the perception, because
Mm.
people see people, you know, come up with their own opinions, right? So the
Yep.
perception has to change. And I think as a pinnacle point of this being you guys, I just hope that there are more and more, not just the private sector, but even individuals like us, even parents who have
Absolutely.
kids in their private school, trying to really voice out, and hopefully there'll be some changes within the Ministry of Education itself to really look into just, I guess, reforming the ideal way of growing our education system. But soon saying the other question is, I want to ask, to be, just between, well, I mean, the whole world is watching this, but just on TFM, you've been there for a very long time. It's probably one of Malaysia's legacy, I would say, on trying to be not just an observer, but an entity to improve the system. What other things that we can do immediately, as of me or those who are watching. I know that we have a project that you're running with us, which I'll talk about later, but more in general, for us to be more, do you need more teachers who are passionate? Do you need resources? Do you need people to start, support their own local public school, and how they can be part of the parents teachers committee, if that's a thing? What advice could you lead us to reform a better Malaysian school system?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing that we need to do is just increase our awareness, right? And I think that understanding the problems and the challenges, and obviously everyone who's watching this, you're playing a part in that, right? In increasing your awareness, and I think it's changing our mindsets around the public education system, right? I think we've got to believe that the public education system must thrive and must flourish, and therefore we must invest in it and get active in it, right? So a problem or a challenge that we face at Teach for Malaysia is oftentimes when we're recruiting young people, oftentimes there are parents who are like, "Oh, don't become a teacher. We sent you overseas to study this, or you got a university degree at such a great university in Malaysia, and now you're going to study to be a teacher." We really believe that teaching is such a powerful and important profession, and we need our absolute best people in teaching. And so, I think we've got to change that narrative, and we've got to believe that the best people need to go into teaching. And so, number one, we'd encourage parents to shift that mindset, right? And I think that get involved, right? Like exactly like you said, Zikri, like being an active participant in a PIBG or a Parents Teacher Association, if you have children in school, is really, really important, because that's a way that you can directly get involved and help the schools to transform, right? But we'd encourage people, who can get involved with Teach for Malaysia to support us as well, right? So you can donate to Teach for Malaysia, and everything that you donate helps us to work towards education equity or quality education for all kids. But there are also volunteering opportunities, and one of the programs that we are running in addition to our regular programs is a tutoring program, so that we can support the kids who have been most affected by the school closures. And people can either sign up to be a volunteer tutor, or you can actually get a full-time role being a tutor based out of a school. So there are many volunteering opportunities. You can help us to build online lessons for kids, and so you can find out more at our website at teachformalaysia.org.
Well, that's a lot of things that we all can do, and I'm happy to hear this. I mean, at least there's a solution, more than one, from what I'm hearing, to sort of build a stronger case in your crusade of bettering the whole system in Malaysia. And right before we go, I think we're running out of time, because time flies when you're having fun. We're just gonna share very quickly on this project that you guys are doing called Sumo Anna Malaysia. Just talk briefly about it, well, on what it is about, and how are we helping this, and how is this impactful in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we're running a campaign called Sumo Anna Malaysia, and that's what we're hoping to do is gather stories of hope and
Okay.
also raise awareness around the issues of kids who are most affected by the challenges in education. And through that campaign, we're hoping to raise money for Teach from Malaysia, and we're inviting people, members of the public, to share your stories of hope for Malaysia. What do you want to see for every child in Malaysia? But as well as we're going to be sharing stories of how kids are affected, right, by challenges in education, by COVID during this period of time, and welcome everyone to come and support us on that campaign.
Fantastic. I love that. I'm definitely gonna encourage my nephew, who's only 1 year old. Of course, doesn't apply. But I would definitely encourage my relatives, my friends' kids to look into this. If for those who are watching, I've also left a few handles here for those who haven't followed Teach for Malaysia on Instagram and on Facebook. The handles are down there. You see, I've been scrolling there for the whole 20 minutes. Go visit teachformalaysia.org. There are various things that you can do. You can even subscribe a monthly donation to them to keep powering the work that they do. And of course, for those who want to contribute to the campaign, you can always go to our this site right here and go ahead, contribute, share your stories. We'd love to hear more. And like I said, Sun Seng, I had a great time talking about this with you, and I think this has been not just an opener for me as an individual, but for definitely people who are watching, whether you're Malaysian or non-Malaysian. Education still matters, because this is the Advantage show, because we cover only things that matter. Sun Seng, I had a great time speaking with you. I mean, my regards to your team for doing an amazing
Thank
job.
you.
Let's always keep in touch. Let us know how we can help, and I'll do my best
Yeah.
to do everything we can to groom and grow. Sorry, not group, to grow each other. So
Yeah.
that's it, man. Any last words you would like to say to everyone else, those who are thriving during this pandemic?
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me on the show, Zikri. And I really hope that everyone who's watching, that you're doing well, you're getting vaccinated, and that you're staying safe. Take care, everybody.
Fantastic. Have a great time, and we'll be in touch. Thank you so much, Sun Seng. Cheers.
See you.